Created a company in New York City that was a platform as a service company, a cloud company that was in the origins of Node.js. Sold that company to GoDaddy and started a company 5 years ago called WildE, which helps large enterprises in the UK and the US to be ahead of their competitors with culture, design, and engineering. So today, I think these are roughly the innovation themes that I see that I think are really important in us. Culture, which a lot of people talk about, strategy and execution, and ambidextrous leadership, which is the concept of being able to run a very good bottom line while at the same time innovating at speed and competing with your competitors and with startups. I have 15 minutes, so I'm going to focus on strategy and execution and try to show some tangible ways that I've seen this be tackled. One of the things that people say a lot is celebrate failure. I think it's interesting, certainly, and in startups, you can afford to do it, but in enterprises, well, that's not really how it goes, right? If you fail on your innovation charter, you probably don't have an innovation charter, and that's how it works. And so I think it's more about how we perceive risk. In the history of humanity, of course, risk is very important because we have to survive, we have to find food. In the history of business, however, it's a bit different. And the reason why risk in business is so hard to gauge is that you look at something like PayPal or all these companies, and you can only see the positive. They came out from risk on the positive side. So PayPal, for instance, in 2005, it took them 6 weeks to release a single copy change, a word, in their website. And there was good reason for it, right? It's a bank. It runs the world's money. How do you innovate in such uncharted waters? The best entrepreneurs took that as a mission, and they saw that that could disrupt them. Reed Hastings looked and said, well, OK, we had the startup. It ships DVDs to people, and it's really good. But he saw that he was going to be disrupted by the internet, by doing online content. And he even looked at HBO and other producers and said, and I'm going to do my own content so that I can be in control of the full cycle. So the best entrepreneurs have been on top of this, and I think that enterprises need to do the same. The reason for it is quite simple. This is a graph from The Economist, actually, showing the rate of adoption of technology when it gets to 25% of American population. And that rate is just increasing, right? The web took 7 years. Electricity took almost 50. Once again, like, the very best people are looking at this pace of change, and they're like, we have to embrace it. Jeff Bezos, instead of complaining how unsettled their customers is, he said that he loved how divinely discontent their clients were, which, it's human nature, he says. And it looks a bit like this, right? You used to have companies like Bang & Olufsen that did these perfect TVs, these perfect stereos, and it's like, it's going to last 100 years. And Jeff Bezos' hypothesis is kind of like, well, not really, because with all this new stuff, the expectation is just a moving target. So we have to move with the expectation. We have to change our products continuously. If you're doing a digital transformation, this might be the gap. Your current experience with your customers is started by you having a very differentiated product that people loved. But over time, and with the advent of new stuff just coming all over, you might have lagged a bit behind. And you need to get back in line with the customer expectations. So that's your target experience. I see a lot of people talking about delighting their customers. So surely, the target experience needs to be better than the expected experience. Once again, bad news. It's getting worse. Just, the graph is a bit wrong. You're not there. You're a bit ahead. Technology is a bit ahead of what us as humans expect. If you look, I have kids, and if I look at my kids, their expectation of interacting with a phone or a tablet is incredibly different from mine. My adaptability to technology is not as good as theirs, and technology is ahead, but that's going to increase. And I just see this trend that in the future, if you have a client and a customer has a bad experience with your product, they will go and say, well, I had this experience that was bad with your product. I do not expect this experience to be repeated. I do not expect the same thing to happen in a poor way twice. If it does, your brand absolutely sucks. You are the worst. That expectation is crushing us. In here, you can see how Amazon, like a graph where I'm being a bit cheeky here, showing how Amazon, the market cap has increased, and now at the same time, the earning calls of machine learning on public companies have increased. Because I think companies like Amazon are continuously iterating on their products proactively to find black swan product engineering, finding the flaws and improving them so that you don't see them twice. They don't want you to leave their platform. It's about your engagement. And a lot of the people that we work with, they say, well, we're no startup. And normally this is the news that I give them. In 50 years in Fortune 500, only 37% of the company survives. So sure, you're no startup, but statistically speaking, you still have to have a solution to the ambidextrous leadership problem. Diginomica says that there is a pattern for that all these disruptive newcomers share, and that with effort, it can be applied to transform digital enterprises. So the talk of today, I'm not going to show how it's done, because I don't know. But I know how we've been doing it for 5 years, and now we have seen that being done in the past. Step number 1, people. And I think this is the biggest thing. Most organizations' biggest challenge is to change from a culture of delivery to a culture of learning. I don't mean everyone turns into being a school or a university. I mean you have to learn from your customers. You have to learn from your peers. And you need to have career progression for your staff, for yourself, for your products. Everything needs to be about learning. When you're talking about data, you're talking about learning. That's why it's machine learning. And you need to change that culture of continually improving your products. This is what you see. Like when you're doing a product for 100 years, you want a long shelf life. You want a product that lasts a long time. You want to be sure that like whatever you do is very controlled by you. But when you change for something that you might just do a new product and throw it away in 6 months, you can't do that. You have to leverage open source so that you can reuse what the industry is doing. You have to be lean. You have to be continuous. You have to be shipping all the time because you have to ship those improvements to the clients at a record pace. You have to outpace them. Another thing is in terms of talent. Like organizations need to be ambidextrous. They need to sustain innovation while being very good running their businesses. But in your innovation charter, you need to find people with great attitude. They need to have an attitude for learning. You need to find the A players of tomorrow to do innovation. Or, like Netflix likes to say, real company values are shown by who gets promoted, rewarded, or let go. That's how you reinforce the behaviors in your organization. Step number 2 is the process of how you actually guide a transformation like this in a company. You start by choosing your adventure. These are some sample stuff that I've seen in the past. It's not rocket science. Often it looks like rocket science, but let's just say your conversion on something is below par with your competitors. Well, that's an easy thing. So you should pick whatever is the easiest to do with the technology and the teams that you have that the business thinks is incredibly impossible. Your CEO thinks, oh my God, that's impossible to do. So pick that, because that's going to be easy to prove. And then you need to follow like some very, very simple process. First, be very deliberate in telling people, OK, this is what we're going to do. This is the ROI you're going to have. And formulate an hypothesis. OK, so we're going to overtake rival publication there because we are going to reduce our page load time. We're going to create AMP to drive more traffic. And we're going to create an ad tech solution to reduce tracking pixels and increase the experience in your platform. If that's publishing, that can be your solution. The third thing is you need to start small. You can't do innovation by just going to your day-to-day business and now just plugging it in. You need to start, and normally people start with one project manager, one designer, and one engineer, and you start iterating on your findings. This is the actual a whiteboard from PayPal. Bill Scott, the guy that said that thing, is an advisor of mine, so he sent me this. And this is what they did when they transformed that PayPal that took 6 weeks to the new PayPal. They actually started with a checkout app, because that's low-hanging fruit. And every Thursday, they had usability day. That means no developer was developing, no designer was designing, no project managing was doing like all the planning that they need to do. They were all with customers on that day. And they would always make their roadmap based on that. On Friday, they build a roadmap. On Thursday they study. And they would do 2-week sprints. Now, It changes, of course, but this is the solution that they found that allowed PayPal to go on a very big journey, because you're not just moving the checkout page, you're moving a whole company to a new operating model. Once you have that, it's important to reinforce your wins. Go to your stakeholders and say, hey, I said I'm going to go from here to here. We went from here to here. I think that we should grow this approach. Maybe we should try 2 new projects based on the success of this one. And I want to make sure that we bring this culture on to our organization in a positive manner. Daniel Kahneman said that only positive reinforcement works. So bring the new gardens of talent to your organization and make everyone else that is motivated to be in those gardens to want to come with. Cool. Once you have it, you want to scale the approach. Now, this is where you get a lot of issues. I mean, you might have teams that have been doing legacy systems forever. And, you're going to launch a product in 3 months. It takes them a year to do, they're still on the long shelf life. How do you do it? Well, you have to take control of those borders, and you need to innovate on those borders. That's number one. So you need to build solutions, technical solutions for that. You probably heard of GraphQL or back-end to front-end or strangler pattern and other things that people do to mitigate these risks. Then methodology. I'm not a big fan of any methodology or all methodologies, but I think whatever it is, your proof of your delivery team, your project management team should be, I want to show that this methodology increases our cadence and the ability that we have to show to the business that we can repeat this case study. The more cadence you have, doesn't matter, story points, t-shirt sizing, burn down charts, whatever you are, what matters is how fast you can prove to your CEO that this is being successful. The faster you can do it, the better the methodology, and that's it. The third thing that I think is often overlooked, and that's why so many people use recruitment agencies, is that they ignore their own staff. So it's all about the people, but the people don't matter. So they don't have a career framework for them. They don't think about where they're going to do. They're not thinking how they interact, how they build culture together, how they share knowledge across different projects, how they consolidate knowledge. They don't think about the charters. Well, then people leave. And when people leave, that is your core IP. So many people are afraid of AI because they're going to steal our jobs. Well, AI helps us have jobs. You just have to keep the knowledge inside and make people be motivated to make the best of the programs that we build. So this is a sample of something that we would build. The app layer on the top is something that now you iterate a lot. So if you're doing a web app, you might just build it all from scratch again. You have to leverage cloud and software as a service, things like GitHub, Amazon. If you don't, you're just rebuilding everything from scratch. Your innovation is going to be very, very difficult, and you're never going to be able to compete. And you have to use new ways to have your back-end systems then to iterate them, and with some kind of legacy proxy, because if you're an airline and you expect to be able to change 50 vendors that have different ways of booking tickets, well, that's never going to happen. And they're not going to be faster because you impose an SLA on them, because they don't have the technology for it. And then you have to build a shared team so that you can scale this approach, so that they can understand how to use things easier by using documentation, or they can mash up products together in a consistent way to branding and to the engagement of your clients with a design system, or a SRE team to allow to control all the production quality, security, performance, and all the things that are expected of your companies day to day. And an SDET team to make sure that the quality and the practices of your teams are getting better every single time. So to summarize, that's what we call a culture of learning. Make sure that you learn, both in personal development, professional development, team development, and learning from your customers. And at the same time, celebrate and make sure that you have a cadence of wins and not a cadence of features. These are some of the people that over the past 5 years we've helped with in this process. So to wrap up, these are the 3 innovation themes that I think are really important. I only spoke mostly about one. I'm sure we don't have time for questions, and I'm over it. But you can find me on the hallway track and ask me anything you want. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have. Thank you.